LSAP, and this is our very first Chem Tutorial 0.1. And in this tutorial, we're going to be talking about safety. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the hazards of chemicals and how to be aware of those hazards, and then what to do if a chemical is accidentally exposed to us that is hazardous. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about the NFPA chemical hazard label, and you've probably seen this before. It's also called the hazard diamond. So I may refer to it as both the hazard label and the hazard diamond. The hazard label has 4 specific sections, and each of these colors is going to give us information on a particular category of hazard. So the first we're going to talk about is the red box at the top, and that corresponds to flammability. So anytime you see the red box, know that that gives you information on whether or not the chemical is flammable. And the second box is the yellow one, and that tells us whether or not the chemical is stable. And what that means is if the chemical is stable, it just means it will not react easily with air or light or water, things like that. And so we also refer to that as its reactivity. If the chemical is highly reactive, that means it's also highly unstable. Health, the blue box tells us a little bit about the health hazards of the chemical. So is it dangerous to inhale? Is it dangerous to touch? Things of that nature. And then the last box, we call it special, and that just gives us some specific hazards that that chemical could have, and we'll walk through what some of those special hazards look like in here in just a second. So here's an example hazard label, and we see that there are numbers corresponding to each of the category sections. Well, these numbers tell us how serious that particular hazard is. So remember, red means flammable, yellow means reactivity or stability, the white is the special category, and then blue is health. So we see a 4 in the red category means that it is very flammable because 4 is the most serious. 0 under the yellow box means that this chemical is not reactive, it's very stable, and so we don't have to worry about it reacting when we open up the box and it's exposed to air and light. The 2 under the blue means that it is a mild health hazard. And so if we want to figure out exactly what that means, what does this mild health hazard mean? You know, is it bad to touch? Is it bad to breathe? What is it? We would need to actually read the safety data sheet on that particular chemical to get that information. Here's another one. Here's a sample one. It's pretty self-explanatory. It walks you through the numbers. Remember, 4 is the most severe, so this is very flammable. It's very dangerous to health. It's highly unstable. It's highly reactive. So you have to be careful about what it's near, where you open it. And then the only new thing on this particular box is that there is a special hazard. Anytime you see a W with that line marked through it, it just means no water. Do not have this particular chemical near water, otherwise it will react. Okay, so I told you earlier, if you remember, that if you see a number on your hazard diamond that is maybe a 2 or a 3, and you want to know exactly what does that 2 and 3 stand for, you would want to look at that chemical's safety data sheet, and that's what SDS stands for. Okay, so this is a picture of what a sample SDS looks like for jet fuel. You see that the diamond is going to be always at the top, and then we see that there's information and it's separated by sections. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the important sections. There's a lot of sections in an SDS sheet that you do not need to be aware of. So I'm only going to walk you through the sections that you actually do need to know. So the first section is the identification section. All this section gives you is just the name of the actual chemical. Okay, so if you're trying to find the chemical name, go to section 1 of the SDS sheet. Section 2 gives us a ton of information. If I had to tell you one section on an SDS sheet that was the most important section, it would be section 2, because it tells us the hazards specifically that are that we have to be aware of with this chemical. So the first part of section 2 is right here. It says classifications, and we see that there's different classifications. There's whether something's flammable, aspiration hazard, that just means breathing hazard, and then carcinogenicity, which is how likely this chemical is to cause cancer. So we see that there's category numbers here, right? There's category 1, category 2. These numbers are not at all related to the diamond that we just talked about. Okay, so remember the diamond numbers go from 0 to 4. 0 is least serious, 4 is the most serious. These numbers down here are the opposite, which is so confusing, I know, but you just have to remember that on the actual SDS sheet in section 2, category 1 is the most hazardous, and category 5 is the least hazardous. It would be really nice if they kept the scale the same way, but you know, that would be obviously too easy for us. So they flipped them around. So this chemical is highly flammable. It's a big hazard for breathing in. You don't want to do that. And then it could possibly cause cancer as a category 2. And then the next section, we're still in section 2, but the next part of section 2 are the pictograms. And this is something brand new that they have implemented in safety data sheets that they did not use several years back. So this is kind of a new thing, is that they've actually put the pictograms inside of the SDS sheet. So I'm going to walk you through what I think are the 9 most important pictograms, okay? So the very first one is not a zero. It's a circle with flames on top. And that picture is for oxidizers. An oxidizer is anything that reacts with oxygen. So that's an I, oxidizers, okay? The next box is a big flame, and this is for chemicals that are flammable. Okay, and then the next box, is for explosives, because obviously shows a bomb exploding. Whether a chemical is flammable or explosive, it really just depends on how big their generation of heat is. So if something just catches fire, we say it's flammable. If something catches fire and then can also cause projectiles, we call those explosives. So, and then let's go down to the middle where we see 2 test tubes and there's some drops being dropped on the hand and then on the object. These are corrosive chemicals. Corrosive, does it have 2 S's? It does not. Corrosive. Okay, so chemicals that are corrosive just mean that they are going to eat away at whatever they drop on. So if you get corrosive chemicals on your hands, obviously you're going to want to go to the sink and then wash your hands under cold water for like 5 to 10 minutes if you happen to get those on your hands. The next this is actually a gas cylinder, and so this just stands for gases under pressure. And then I'm going to walk you through the middle one. There's a tree right down here at the very bottom. And this stands for things that are environmental hazards. So I may not have room to write this out. Let's see. Environmental hazard. Okay. Environmental hazard, which means just really that we are going to have to take extra precautions when we dispose of it. Something with this pictogram is not something you want to obviously put down our sink in the lab. And then I'm going to walk you through the last 3. I know they're kind of like in different areas, but they all relate to the same topic. The skull and crossbones, the silhouette, and the exclamation point all tell us various levels of health hazards. Okay, so the exclamation point is something we call an irritant. That means that you want to be aware that this chemical can cause irritation on your hands, can cause irritation if you breathe it in like excessively. And so we still use these types of chemicals in the lab. We just have to be extra careful about how much we are near the chemicals, how much we breathe them in, and how much we touch them. The last 2 pictograms are chemicals we will not have in the lab. One of them is one with a silhouette, and that's a severe health hazard. So severe health hazard. And then the one with the skull and crossbones is anything that is severely toxic. Severely toxic. Okay, so those are our major 9 pictograms. This is still part of section 2. They give us some precautionary statements in section 2 that just tells us, okay, these are some things you're not going to want to do with your particular chemical. And then still in section 2, they give some information on how to store the chemical and how to dispose it. So you get so much really important information in section 2. That's why I said this is the most important section to read when you are reading an SDS sheet. Section 4 is essentially emergency procedures. What happens if you inhale the chemical? What happens if you touch it? What happens if it gets in your eye or if you accidentally ingest it? These are the safety procedures to follow. Section 5 gives you information specifically if there's a fire with that chemical. And lastly, section 9 tells us the physical and chemical properties of the chemical. So it tells us what temperature this product will produce harmful vapors. It'll tell us the explosive limit. So that's important to know if we're in like a confined space using a chemical inside. And that's it for this video. Y'all have a great day and get started on your 0.1 skill check.